Hi, I'm Janis Searles-Jones, CEO of Ocean Conservancy. Today I'm thrilled to be with former Secretary of State John Kerry, and we're going to have a conversation about ocean conservation. Secretary Kerry, thank you so much for spending this time with me. I would love to have a conversation with you about our ocean and where you see us now as far as ocean conservation goes, what you see for the opportunities for the future. And I thought I would start with, while you were at the State Department, you and your team conceived of and launched the Our Ocean Conference Series, which brings together global leaders to make commitments to tackle major pressing ocean issues. And now that it's headed into its 5th year, I'm curious what really drove you to start that Ocean Conference Series and what you see as its lasting legacy.
Well, what drove me to start the Our Oceans conferences was literally a passion for the oceans, coupled with a growing anxiety, fear for the state of the oceans and for the direction that we're going in. What excites me is this year it will be in Bali, Indonesia, the next conference. The year after that, Norway has already spoken for it. They want to do it. The year after that, Palau wants to do it. And I just was at meetings where the Russians informed me they want to do the one after that. So we've got this building momentum for people to learn and do something about it. And at the first ocean conferences we did, the first 4 of them, we have raised $18 billion to be put into enforcement, research, increased capacity to understand exactly what's happening, and efforts to protect marine areas. So we now have 12.4 million square kilometers of ocean, larger than the size of the United States, has now been, in the last 4 years, set aside for marine protected areas. So we're starting something, but we've got a lot of work to do to catch up.
You chaired the Arctic Council, which is a really unique intergovernmental body where the United States and still Russia have a global conversation around Arctic conservation. I'm curious what you see as the Arctic Council's next steps, why the Arctic is important to the U.S. as a nation. Not a lot of people understand that the Arctic is, or the U.S. is an Arctic nation. So if you could speak a little bit to the importance of our U.S. interests in a resilient Arctic.
Well, there are many, many reasons why the United States has interests in the Arctic, and we're among the key nations that border the Arctic that form the Arctic Council. So you have, Russia and Denmark, which has rights, and we have rights in Canada and so forth. A lot of nations want in on it. And the reason they want in on it is that the economic zones of countries that are, adjacent to, abutting the Arctic, have initial rights for commercial exploitation. And as the ice recedes, areas that previously had not been accessible become accessible. So extraction is a particular concern. So our interests are in making sure that whatever development takes place under rules and rule of law and is manageable and is sustainable.
Given where we are federally right now in this moment of time, what advice would you have for climate advocates, for ocean advocates to sort of breach this gap?
I can remember a movement which I was part of back in the early 1970s when we didn't have an EPA. We didn't have a clean drinking water or safe drinking water law. We didn't have a coastal zone management law. All of that came because people were inspired to organize around the first Earth Day, and then they took that and put it into legislative reaction. And when that happened, politicians suddenly listened. So my advice to people is, don't lament it. Don't sit around wringing your hands. Don't say, oh, it's bigger than me, I can't do anything. That's not true. There is absolutely a role for anybody concerned about oceans to link with climate and anybody concerned about climate to link with oceans. These are one and the same. They are integrally linked because everything about the flow of the oceans, the great currents, the Gulf Stream, El Nino, all these things are affected by climate and what is happening with climate.
And one of the things that we can do to really be most impactful is to look at developing countries where the pace of development has outstripped the infrastructure investments and figure out how to do waste management and collection. And as Secretary of State, you have been a lead negotiator and leading coalitions of countries and divergent interests to really tackle some of these complex problems. And I'm curious whether or not you think we are capable as a planet of solving the plastic problem and what pathways you see there.
Any human problem, human created, is subject to being solved, changed, fixed. Where, I mean, there are things we could do that would quickly reduce the amount of plastic that is exposed. Maybe put a premium on people collecting it before it goes in the ocean. Get a bunch of kids in beach communities that are daily in the summer. This is your job. This is your summer job. This beach is never going to have a piece of plastic on it.
So you mentioned that our ocean's going to be in Bali, and Indonesia is one of those countries that really popped out with the science paper assessing what the plastic flows are into the ocean as one of the top 5, and that really diagnosed that waste management and the lack of waste management and collection, unlike in the United States and many Western countries where that's sort of part of the municipal fabric. So increasing investments and financing and figuring out how to support those infrastructure investments
That's a big
can be
deal.
an important part of the solution.
Yes, very much so.
For a lot of people out there who don't fully appreciate as much as you perhaps do how important the ocean is to all of us, but who share that real passion for the ocean and want to do something to make sure it is protected and remains resilient, what advice would you give to them?
You know, if you want to look down into water that's clear, if you want to have a swimming experience somewhere in your life, you want to go to a beach that isn't littered with, whatever it is, think about it and think about our responsibility to do something about that. We depend on the ocean for vast percentage of the Earth's protein that people consume. Mm-hmm. We depend on it for huge amount of jobs that people have. We also depend on it for the oxygen, as I said, that we breathe. It's 3/4 of the face of the planet is ocean. And we could have been called ocean, not Earth.
Right.
But it's vital to the existence of life on Earth, and it is also vital to the quality of life on Earth. Those two things ought to motivate people enough.
I think that was a pretty brilliant way to wrap up the conversation, so thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thank you.